History hasn't been kind to women, often treating them as property, denying them the right to vote until 1920, and paying them less for the same work. But the cruelty goes even deeper with the brutal punishments women have endured, some of which still occur today. From foot binding to the painful corset, here are 10 of the harshest tortures women have faced throughout history. Number 1. Burning. Burning at the stake dates back to ancient Babylon in the 18th century BC and resurfaced throughout history in places like ancient Egypt, Rome, medieval Europe, and during the Spanish Inquisition. It was often used to execute women accused of crimes, religious beliefs, or ethnicity, with Joan of Arc being one of the most infamous victims. In colonial America, although no women in Salem were burned, the first recorded woman executed by fire was Maria, a servant accused of arson. The last known case of death by fire in America occurred in 1805, and the final woman burned at the stake was in 1826 during the Spanish Inquisition. Some victims were strangled by a rope before the flames reached them, while others suffered slow, agonizing deaths. Fire was often used for its symbolic association with purging evil, particularly during the European witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, where thousands were executed for alleged witchcraft. Over time, shifting attitudes during the Age of Enlightenment led to the decline of such executions, as new ideas about justice and human rights emerged. Today, burning at the stake serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of societal fear and injustice. It highlights the importance of due process and protecting individual rights from unjust persecution. Number 2. Pear of anguish. The pear of anguish, also known as the mouth pear, was a metal device allegedly used to punish women during the early modern period, 1400 to 1800. Shaped like a pear with spiked segments, it could be expanded via a key or spring mechanism. The device was inserted into a woman's body, causing severe damage. However, its historical use is debated, with some scholars questioning its plausibility. The earliest mention appears in F. D. Calley's 1639 work, where it's attributed to Captain Garo de Palawi, who allegedly used it to rob victims. While some regard the pear of anguish as a sensational tale rather than a real torture method, many examples are still displayed in museums. Often associated with punitive devices from periods of social unrest, the pear of anguish symbolizes the brutal punishment of women accused of witchcraft or adultery. It reflects the patriarchal views of the time, where women's bodies were heavily policed. The device's origins are tied to the sensationalism in crime literature and folklore, which embellished horrific punishment methods for dramatic effect. Despite uncertainty about its historical use, the pear of anguish remains a symbol of humanity's darker past. It has influenced horror fiction, illustrating themes of control and suffering. Today, discussions of such devices highlight the importance of human rights and compassion, offering insights into past cultural attitudes and the evolution of societal norms. Number 3. Spanish donkey. The Spanish donkey, also known as the wooden horse, was a brutal torture device used during the medieval era and notably the Spanish Inquisition. It consisted of a triangular wedge, often equipped with spikes, where victims, usually women, were forced to straddle the sharp end. This caused severe injury to the lower body, leaving some unable to walk and others dying from blood loss. Weights were sometimes added to victims' legs, further damaging bones and organs. The device was not only physically torturous but also a tool for psychological humiliation, as victims were paraded through towns. The Spanish donkey highlighted the gendered nature of punishment, as women, especially those accused of witchcraft or infidelity, faced harsher penalties. In the aftermath of the Civil War, similar forms of punishment were used on freed slaves in the United States, continuing a legacy of violence and humiliation. Today, the Spanish donkey is studied as a dark reminder of past cruelty and a symbol of the need for vigilance in upholding human dignity. Its use is condemned globally, and educational efforts work to prevent such practices from being forgotten, encouraging a more humane future. Number 4. The Republican marriage. The concept of a Republican marriage is both disturbing and unusual. It involved tying a couple together and throwing them into a river, sometimes forcing them to remain bound and naked for extended periods. This punishment was reportedly used during the French Revolution, 1793 to 1794, under Jean-Baptiste Carrier, often targeting priests and nuns. However, no verified eyewitness accounts have been found, and many historians question its reality. The assistant prosecutor at Carrier's trial dismissed the claims as unreliable, though Carrier and his associates were still sentenced to death. Republican marriage mocked traditional weddings and symbolized the revolutionaries' push to dismantle church influence and societal norms, promoting a secular order based on reason. While its historical accuracy is debated, the term endures in discussions of power, oppression, and individual rights. It serves as a reminder of how political ideologies can dehumanize people, highlighting the dangers of extremism and the importance of protecting personal freedoms. Number 5. Stoning. Stoning is a brutal punishment where a crowd throws stones at a person until they die. Historically, it was used for offenses like breaking the Sabbath, cursing God, or committing adultery. Although often seen as a practice of the past, it still occurs in countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Sudan, Somalia, and Yemen. The United Nations condemns stoning as torture and a violation of human rights. Women are disproportionately affected due to discrimination in legal systems. Stoning reflects deeper societal issues, particularly the control of women's behavior in patriarchal cultures, where women face severe punishment for adultery, while men often escape with lighter consequences. This disparity underscores gender inequalities in these legal systems. Despite its roots in ancient legal codes and religious texts, many scholars argue it should not be practiced today. Number 6. The breast ripper. The breast ripper was a cruel device used to inflict severe pain on women, often with heated prongs to increase suffering. Also called the iron spider, it had 4 claws designed to tear the flesh. Women, particularly unmarried mothers or those accused of adultery, were subjected to this brutal punishment to cause lasting harm, both physical and psychological. The device symbolizes the extreme measures used to enforce patriarchal norms and punish women for perceived transgressions. This reflects the broader misogyny and violence of the Middle Ages, where women who defied societal expectations often faced torture or death. Instruments like the breast ripper highlight the control over women's bodies and the repression they endured. Today, the legacy of such devices informs discussions on gender-based violence and discrimination. Awareness campaigns advocate for an end to these injustices and emphasize the need to empower women. By acknowledging this painful history, we can strive for a more compassionate and equal society. In conclusion, the breast ripper serves as a stark reminder of past atrocities, urging us to ensure such horrors are never repeated. Number 7. Catherine's wheel. The Catherine's wheel, a brutal torture device, is named after Saint Catherine of Alexandria, who became a martyr during Emperor Maxius's persecution of Christians. Legend says she broke the wheel by touching it before being beheaded. Her story influenced Joan of Arc, who claimed to hear Saint Catherine's voice nearly 1,000 years later. Artistic depictions often show Saint Catherine with a broken wheel or a miniature version in her hands, along with the executioner's sword. Victims were strapped to the wheel, and their limbs smashed with clubs, leading to agonizing deaths. Though used across Europe, the wheel was also employed in colonial America, killing several enslaved people. Today, it appears in songs, novels, gymnastics terms, and the coats of arms of various organizations and locations, symbolizing its dark legacy. Number 8. The iron chair. The iron chair was a horrific form of torture, using sharp spikes and fire to inflict excruciating pain. It was designed with up to 500 razor-sharp spikes, targeting primarily women for offenses like adultery, witchcraft, or murder. Victims were forced to sit on the chair for hours, leading to death from blood loss, while compartments beneath the chair were ignited, roasting them alive. This method was used in Europe until the late 1800s and also in China between 1701 and 1900. The torture was often used to extract confessions, with victims witnessing the suffering of others. Reports indicate that similar practices persist in North Korean prisons today. Number 9. Corsets. Similar. Foot binding and corsets were historically used to enforce unrealistic beauty standards on women by shaping the body into an hourglass figure, emphasizing a small waist and enhanced bust. Though corsets were worn by both genders, they became strongly associated with women's fashion. First introduced in the 16th century during Catherine de' Medici's reign, corsets gained popularity in the 18th century. While modern corsets no longer aim for permanent body modification, their predecessors could cause serious health issues like restricted breathing, rib deformities, and digestive problems. Today, a slim waist is achieved through exercise and diet. Interestingly, some modern corsets are used for lumbar support, showing that when used properly, they can be beneficial. Still, traditional corsets reflect the historical manipulation of women's bodies in the name of beauty. Number 10. Foot binding. Foot binding, a painful tradition from China, was not initially meant to torture, but it caused immense suffering. Young girls, as young as 4, had their feet tightly wrapped to create lotus feet, believed to enhance marriage prospects. The ideal size was 3 to 4 inches, with anything larger considered unacceptable. The practice, which began in the 10th century during Emperor Liu's reign, involved breaking bones and deforming arches. It became a symbol of status, especially among wealthy families. Activism against it grew in the late 19th century, leading to a ban in 1912, though some women continued in secret until the last case in 1957. Many later regretted the practice, recognizing it as a symbol of oppression, not beauty.